Alright, I'm here in my room. I've got my computer set up in front of me. I've got my microphone. There's a notepad open. It's got some notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. Looks like they're open to the 10th scene of Memento that starts in black and white at 18 minutes and 3 seconds, with Leonard saying how he met Sammy through his work as an insurance investigator, and ends at 21 minutes and 52 seconds, with Leonard saying how Sammy was his first real challenge. There's also a Skype window open. Oh, hang on. Who is this?
Bubba! It's me, Lisa Leaheey from Rabbit Hole Podcasts. You know me. We've chatted a whole bunch of times.
Oh, of course. I'm so sorry, but I do prefer to be called Bubbawheat. And who are you?
Oh, this Bubbawheat. You don't know this is MovieRob. You've been on my podcast twice already. We talked about planes, trains, and automobiles. Maybe you remember that. We've also talked about When Harry Met Sally. Maybe you remember that.
Oh, of course. I do remember that. I'm so sorry, but it's great to have you back here for your third week here talking about another black and white scene of Memento.
It's great to be back. Thank you guys for having me back again.
Sure, and let's go ahead and just jump straight into this scene. And this is the part in the movie where we learn that Leonard used to be an insurance investigator, and he's someone who felt like he was confident in his ability to read people and tell if they were lying based on their body language. And I think it's interesting, again, hearing him talk about this and his past life, and knowing the movie, knowing how much that ability fails him at every step, and basically every person that he interacts with in this movie is someone that he kind of puts his trust in, and he really shouldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, very much he shouldn't, but off he goes.
I think that's one of the problems that he doesn't trust himself to live by the rules that he set for himself.
I mean, I think he's like any of the rest of us. We all have rules. We all know what we should be doing, but most of us don't take our own advice. Ever.
Yeah.
Correct, but one of the things that he says here is the fact that he's trained himself to do this. So then if that's the case, why break it?
It is true.
That's the question I asked about that.
Yeah, I think my read is that he, at least in a certain way, he has basically become a completely different person at this point in his life. That he is a very far cry from Leonard, the insurance investigator. He still has some of the same traits, like he's good at investigating, but he's kind of lost the ability to read people just because he is not able to kind of keep things in mind for very long. And I feel like he's switched over from taking the time to read people, and because I have some notes about this to talk about a little bit later, but in order to know if someone's lying, you do kind of have to get a baseline for how they act when they're telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever they deviate from that, whenever they're lying, that kind of clues you in. But if you don't have this baseline, then it's harder to tell. And as an insurance investigator, I'm sure that he has the time to get this baseline, going through a line of questioning for things that he knows that they're very likely to be telling the truth, and then deviate into stuff that they might be lying about, so he can see the change over time. But in the situation that he's in now, he doesn't have that time to get to that point, and so he's much more instinctual. And what do you guys think about that?
Well, again, this goes along the whole line of what does he remember from before, and what is he, what are these new kinds of memories that he's found a way to create for himself, which are few and far between, but they're still there. Okay, based on the way that he talks here and the way that he acts, there are things that he now remembers that he theoretically shouldn't be remembering. So apparently he's found a way. I mean, we talked about this 2 weeks ago on the episode that I was on with you guys. He's found a way to jump over the medium term memory, and certain things that were in the short term jumped into the long term, but most of them just stays on the long term. That's what it comes down to. So it's hard to tell. That I think that's my answer to your question. maybe Lisa has a better answer than that. I don't know.
I mean, I like this idea that, he carries on in this clip specifically about how good he was at what he did, and how he's on the phone and he's essentially pontificating about, here's how you do what I did. And yeah, I was very good. And, you just let people talk. And if you just let them talk, i.e. let what this person on the other side of the phone is making Leonard do, you find out all sorts of stuff, like he says these things. And then there's the element of simply watching them. And he says, you just got to watch the eyes. And, it's something that I've always been fascinated by. Like, you watch this film and you just pay attention to the facial expressions and these tiny micro features that they make these moves. And you start wondering what's going on behind what's Teddy doing, what Natalie's doing, what Leonard's doing. And it's just, I don't know. I've always found a lot of what's being written here versus what's being done here. If you really pay attention, the way Rob said, last week, you gotta watch this film, and like, there's so much here. Was it last week? Might have been the week before. I'm blurring my lines now, but
it doesn't.
I don't know.
Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it might as well. My memory's no good either, so it's appropriate something to co-host this podcast.
There you go.
I feel like I'm rambling at this point. So somebody ask a question so I can get back on focus here.
Well, I actually like what you said. That in a way this is, and again we'll kind of mention, we talked about this before. We're all fairly certain that this is Teddy on the phone, even though it is an unnamed person, and we never hear them, and we never get 100% confirmation of who this is.
Well, I mean, according to the trivia on IMDb. This is a later episode that you'll probably talk about, but there is a point where you can see the number that he dials, and it's the same number that he writes on the on the Polaroid of Teddy.
Oh, that's some attention detail right there.
It wasn't me. I said I found that on IMDb. So.
Well, I mean that only accounts for the one, like, whenever Leonard calls him, but there are multiple phone calls. And again, we. You
think he's talking with different people each time?
I mean, I'm saying that I think it's fairly safe to assume that he's always talking to Teddy, but there are multiple phone calls, and there are multiple times whenever it's somebody that's calling him. Like, most of the time, it's somebody calling him. So there's always a chance that it could be somebody else. But I think I'm fairly confident that every time it's Teddy, because that's what makes the most sense.
I agree with you on that.
Okay.
But there's always just this room for doubt. So I kind of I definitely want to keep that open, because again, this is a film about ambiguity, and every character in this movie is unreliable to a certain extent. And so I think there's always that question, and that seed of doubt. Something that Mrs. Jenkins talks about later in the movie, that she always has this seed of doubt that maybe Sammy can come back. And I think throughout this movie there's all these seeds of doubts that it could be what they present, but it could also be something different. And anyways, back to my point. long way around, but I like how Lisa said that in a way it's like Teddy is pulling a Leonard on Leonard himself, and as the audience, we are kind of looking at Leonard, and in the flashback, there is a focus on Leonard's eyes, and we don't get a whole lot of movement. Like, he's standing there very still in the flashbacks, because he really only has some eye movements as he's kind of studying the people that he's talking to in this flashback. And that's very contrasted to how we see him at the beginning of this clip, with his shirt off. He has a lot of motion because he's going through getting set up to give himself this tattoo. So he's gathering up all these materials, he's doing all these things until he eventually sits down on the bed and eventually, comes to rest in order to talk more in detail, and then we cut to the flashbacks with him sitting still, and then again we cut to, and then whenever we cut back to Leonard for the end, he's fidgeting with the razor as he takes the cap off. So he's constantly kind of doing stuff with his hands while he's talking.
Do you think he's using some of his tells?
I mean, I
do
think
I think who's using what? Do I think Teddy's using some of Leonard's tells?
No,
I'm not following you.
We're seeing
like
Leonard. So
Teddy is getting Leonard to talk.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And in order to get a read on, I mean, I think Teddy already has a pretty good lead on Leonard, but it's almost like Teddy is using this tactic against Leonard, and Leonard doesn't even see it, even though he's talking about how experienced he is at doing it himself.
100%. I definitely agree.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And then we do get this, this quick little montage of the various people that he's talking to. And it feels like only a couple of them are showing kind of potential signs of lying. Like the one guy that's tugging at his earlobe, and another, we don't even see the face. We just see the hands like fiddling with the paper clips.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, do either of you know about like tells and stuff like that?
Well, I don't do a ton of research like you do, but I did, and partially since you came on, I did look up 5 signs that you can tell that someone is lying I found this on Inc.com.
I dated a poker player, so I might have some peripheral mediocre information here.
Okay, well, first of all, before you start with that, have either of you seen the movie True Romance, which was
years ago? Yeah,
I'm aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
There was the movie that Quentin Tarantino wrote that he sold in order to get money in order to make Reservoir Dogs, right? So one of the scenes, it's a scene where the character played by, who do you guys think is actually, if you don't remember
Slater?
the movie that well? No, not Christian Slater. Christopher Walken. So he has a big monologue, and he says, "Sicilians are great liars, the best in the world. I'm Sicilian. My father was the world heavyweight champion of Sicilian liars. From growing up with him, I learned the pantomime. There are 17 different things a guy can do when he lies to give himself away. A guy's got 17 pantomimes. A woman's got 20. But a guy's got 17s. But if you know them, like you know your own face, they beat lie detectors all to hell. Now, what we got is a little game of show and tell. You don't want to show me nothing, but you're telling me everything. I know you know where they are, so tell me before I do some damage you won't walk away from." So, I mean, first of all, this is great Tarantino dialogue, no question about it. And Christopher Walken delivers it so beautifully, the way that he does it. But when I rewatched this and this movie, and he talks about the idea of tells, so that's the first thing that jumped into my mind. So I wanted to first bring that up before we get into possibly what some of the tells are. I wasn't able to find a list of 17 or 20 about men or women or whatever it is, but because we're not doing True Romance. If I was doing True Romance, I would have done my best to try and find that information. So sorry to disappoint you on that one.
Yeah, I have a list of 5. So what do you think are some common tells that someone's lying?
Right. So, I mean, the ones that I was able to look up was I found a change in speech patterns. Sometimes you use different types of gestures that you don't normally use. Sometimes you're too quiet or you're rambling on, and vocal tones and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like that, like going in that direction, it's kind of hard to say, because it's like, it could be talking too fast or talking too slow or talking normally.
That's right. No, but I guess it depends. It depends if you know the person.
Something atypical for you.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what.
That goes back to that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you have to have a baseline for somebody, and I feel like it's more about someone deviating from their baseline, which means that they're more likely of lying. But going back to these 5 signs that I found on this website, number 1 is they touch their face, mouth, or throat. This subconscious body language may indicate that someone is lying to you. If you notice someone touching their face who normally doesn't, it's a little red flag. Number 2, they repeat themselves. If someone begins to stammer, repeating words or phrases, it's a sign of that they're trying to think of what to say next. It may indicate that they're concocting the story. And again, always compare their nervous speech to their normal speech. Some people always stammer, so that would be a normal part of speech, not an indication that they're lying. Number 3 is a pause before answering. A long or abnormal pause before someone answers a question may be a tip-off that they are lying. This is especially true if the answer should be simple and obvious. A pause before answering a seemingly easy question may mean that they're trying to keep track of what they've already said and how long to keep the lie going. Number 4, they look toward the door. Subconsciously, we look where we want to go. Someone who is uncomfortable may look toward a door, or at the minimum, break eye contact with you when they're lying. Others may look at their watch, signaling their desire not to spend time in the conversation. And number 5 is they don't blink. Some avid liars have learned to telegraph confidence. So instead of breaking eye contact, they go the opposite direction and stare at you without blinking. So if their eye contact is too intense, that may be a sign that they're trying to cover up their nervousness.
That's interesting, because I was going to argue that they would avoid eye contact.
No, but the idea is that they want to throw you off.
I get that, but I feel like that's somebody who really knows what they're doing versus perhaps an amateur liar would try not to look at you or would struggle to look at you, maybe is more appropriate. I don't know.
Right.
That's crazy though.
And one thing that I considered doing, but I didn't get around to, was looking up the history of the lie detector. But the one thing that I will say is that the lie detector has been around. I do know that. Again, this is pulling from my memory, and I feel like I'm 75% sure, but I believe that the creator of Wonder Woman was also involved in the creation of the lie detector.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident that I remember hearing that bit of trivia. But I know these days, even though it's still used on occasion, most often it's used on shows like like Maury Povich. But in general, they've found that lie detectors are roughly 50% accurate, which is not nearly enough to that. It's basically junk science.
Which is why it's not used in court. You can't use a lie detector in court.
But it is still used it is still thought of in a lot of popular culture, like shows like Maury Povich and things like that, because I think the general public still feels like they are accurate, even though they have pretty soundly been debunked as junk science these days.
Right.
And then that's again, these are pretty short episodes, pretty short scenes here. I think this one's the shortest one, just over 30 seconds. And if we don't get a whole lot, and I think in the other episodes we have kind of covered a lot of the other stuff, in terms of these black and white scenes. But is there anything else you have about this specific scene that either of you want to cover?
Well, first of all, I like the fact that they give us the quick shots of all the people, fidgeting, I guess you can say, just to show, again, as much as possible, this movie is trying to show that Leonard is a reliable narrator, even though, we spoiler, we find out that he's not, but they want us to believe that he is. So in order to give us so much information about what he does and how he does it, what his method is, so that basically is there to convince us that he is reliable. Which again is the whole point. Let's make him seem reliable, and then when you find out he's not reliable, that's when that's when everything's going to hit the fan. That type of thing.
Yeah. And then, and speaking of the unreliableness of Leonard, that brings me to the question that we've been teasing these past couple weeks.
The question.
So we do get hints, and mostly from Teddy, it brings up the fact that that Leonard's condition and Sammy Jenkins are more connected than just they have the same type of amnesia, and he hints that that Leonard's story about Sammy is actually about Leonard and his wife, and that his wife survived the attack. So how connected do you think Leonard and Sammy are? Like, how much do you think that they're the same person?
Oh, they're definitely the same person as far as I'm concerned. It's one of his, his made up memories, I guess you can say. Trying to disassociate himself with it, with everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the end, we get that shot where, he's with his wife, and you see on his chest in that empty space, it says, "I did it." And he's with her.
Which is that weird thing too later on, because he's with his wife, and the suggestion, like, what is it that he did? Did he kill the guy who raped and murdered her? Because if she's right there with him, obviously not. But then, he's got this, I love that you brought this up. He's got this delusion that she's dead due to this accident. So he's trying to find the person that attacked her and killed her. Correct. However, I'm with you. I believe that Leonard is Sammy Jenkins, that story, that she's the one that has diabetes, that he's the one that actually, kills her with the insulin coma. I'm fascinated to think about what the I did it. What's the it? Like, I did it as in I'm the one who killed her. I did it as in I, achieved my goal. What is it, you think?
I think it's I achieved my goal. Because again, he's still, it's not as if this memory loss thing is going to autocorrect itself at some point. It means that even in the epilogue, he still has the same issue.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, because we're still early on in this, and it's been, for me, it's been, I feel like a couple months now since I watched the movie in its entirety. So I'm a little bit more foggy about the last couple scenes, and I'm curious to really, I got to remember to really dig into that whenever we discuss that actual moment on this podcast, because I really think that is worth discussing in more detail, and figuring out if there are any other clues that we've kind of come across as we've been digging into this movie scene by scene, to see if there's anything else that moment can tell us.
Yeah, my assumption is when you dig into it, you will find others. It's not, because these type of movies are always breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look for them, and when you're doing it all in such minute detail, you're going to find them, because people like Christopher Nolan, they put them there for you to find them. But most people don't see them.
And he's definitely someone that 95% of the stuff that you see on screen was put there deliberately, and was put there and done for a reason. And some of the reasons you can decipher and get meanings to that make sense based on the rest of the movie, and some things maybe only Christopher Nolan will ever really know why they were put in there.
Correct. Were you guys, I know this is a little bit of a spoiler for later, but were you guys able to figure out when this movie takes place?
What do you mean when? Like a
what
year?
Time frame?
Or what are we
talking about? A year.
It's not really something that I have given much thought to, because I tend to, unless you mean like in terms of the accident, because my thought is that Leonard and Teddy are on the 6th or 7th John G at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
That's
have
fair.
I don't have like a timeline, because I think other than like 90s to like around the year that this came out, I don't really have any sort of time period.
Okay, so there's a certain point where he looks at Teddy's a photocopy of Teddy's driver's license.
Yep.
And it shows that it expires in 94.
You are the king of the small details, Rob. I love this. It would never even occur to me.
I mean, I know these weren't my scenes. I'm sorry.
I love
think I
these.
did. I think I did bring that up whenever we talked about it. And our now, yeah, because that was, I recorded that episode a while ago now. But
I wasn't there for
I
that one then.
yeah, that was a color scene that we see that, and I think we came to the conclusion that that was an old driver's license that Natalie was able to look up. So that was like that wasn't his current one.
No, I don't know. Nice try. I don't buy that one. No, because I'll tell you why.
Rob
Because
rejects it.
no, I'm looking at it from the perspective that, first of all, no one's using cell phones here.
Right. Oh, of course.
Mhm.
Okay.
But
So
in 99, 2000, they weren't.
They were using them more than they were in '94.
Oh, well, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I remember, I already had a cell phone by like '97, and most people had cell phones back then here.
I did not.
Maybe not
Not
America.
us.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I did as well.
Maybe your parents didn't let you have one at that point. I don't know.
We were still on pagers at that point in the late 90s.
Okay, it could be, but so that's why I believe that that they wanted to make this happen somewhat in the past, and that's why I believe that's an accurate thing, because she said I have a friend at the DMV, so she wouldn't say I have a friend at the DMV who's able to get a copy of his driver's license from 7 years ago. Who cares?
Mm.
If it's a friend at the DMV, it means they can get something that's current.
Would make sense.
Again,
Yeah.
we'll never know these answers. I'm not trying
Christopher
to.
Nolan sure as hell isn't telling us anything.
I'm not trying to hijack your podcast here at all. So.
I didn't feel like you were.
No, it's a valid question. And
No, I said I like to add things in there that you guys wouldn't necessarily have
No,
thought
it's totally fine.
I'm someone that likes to do that myself on these kind of shows as well. So I definitely appreciate it, and because this format is all about minutia. So
Oh, that's for sure.
of. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
You got another master on here with you. I'm just a guest. You guys run these episodes, these podcasts. So
No,
but
I'm a guest. I'm a guest, Lisa. This isn't fun.
yeah, but you know what you're doing. You got your own version, so it's all good.
These
stuff.
episodes wouldn't be so short if I was doing them.
That's fair.
and they're coming in at a half hour each, so that's still.
Yeah, I apologize that I didn't look up the history of disposable razors.
I was thinking of it, but again, this is your show, not mine.
I love it.
I was going to look up
That's
Brood,
quite all right.
like the history of the company Brood, how long they were making shaving cream, things like that.
I remember the scent of that shaving cream too. It makes me laugh every time I watch the movie.
And he also puts a hell of a lot of shaving cream on his leg.
Yes, he does. That is
Yeah.
far too much.
Yes.
But it has been a pleasure having you on here for these past 3 weeks, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy that you guys invited me to partake. I was very happy to rewatch this movie again and go through these 3 minutes, I guess you can say, once again, because each of them was give or less a minute.
Yeah, just about.
About 2.5 a minute, 2.5 minutes.
I appreciate
maybe.
you guys taking that into consideration by giving me, scenes that are basically a minute each. So that's good. You know who you're dealing with.
And then once again, for the last time, why don't you go ahead and let everybody listening know where else they can find you online?
All right. So you can go, and I have a website with movie reviews called it's MovieRob.wordpress.com. Very recently, I've just crossed the 10,000 movie review mark.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice.
So you can go there and check out lots of reviews. I mean, as you mentioned 2 weeks ago, Bubba, I do watch movies over and over. So there are movies that I have numerous reviews of. Memento, I have, I think, 4 reviews of now. Unless something has happened between the time that we're recording this and this is airing, that I decided to watch it again. But who knows? Anything is possible with me. I just think of a movie I want to watch, and then I go and watch it, and I do a review of it. So that's my movie review website, and I also have my podcast. It's the MovieRob Minute, where I look at movies minute by minute. I'm right now ending my 4th season. So first season was The Great Escape. Second season was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Third season was Die Hard. Fourth season was When Harry Met Sally. And just in I guess a week or two, we're going to be starting season 5, which will be Die Hard 2. So you can find me very simply by doing a quick search for MovieRob Minute. You can find me on my website, MovieRobMinute.com. You can find me on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter.
All right. And as always, thank you, Lisa, for joining me as my co-host for these black and white scenes.
Oh, it's so much fun to hang out and chat with you. And I love our guests. They always help us learn such new things.
That's what we're all here for. That's why I love it. Also. Yeah.
And as always, I'm Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all the podcatchers available out there. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, as well as have discussions about other time loop stories out there. And until next time, have I already told you about Memento?
Oh, only every time I see you.
My job taught me the best way to find out what someone knew was just let them talk and watch the eyes and the body language.